Display again. And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the spoiler room. We are closing out Artificially Yours. Yes, we're flipping the switch, so to speak, on the month. But before we do, I decided, it's funny, I changed it up. I was going to look at a more modern AI film, and I'm like, nah, let's set the Wayback Machine, because how could you not talk about films involving artificial people, androids or whatnot, and love interests, and not talk about 1927 Metropolis? And yes, we are talking about the 2-hour and 28-minute version of the film. And I have some wonderful crew members with me tonight to discuss this very interesting, ancient, and yet still relevant film. First off, he's back with us, the man who keeps coming back for more. We've missed his dulcet tones, but he's here with us, Mr. Ian Simmons.
Hey, I'm a little disappointed in the format of tonight's show. I fully expected to have just an orchestral accompaniment with us silently mouthing our opinions with title cards during the interstitials.
While that would work for YouTube, I don't think it would work too well for our podcast version.
The music's great,
It would just be the music. It'd just be the music for an hour or so. And also back with us, you will recognize his voice as well. And it is none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Joe Randazzo. Hello, Joe.
Hey, everyone. It feels like it's been a long time since I've been here. I don't even remember what the last one I did was.
It's been a while since you were here, and Ian's. It's been a little while since Ian was here. So, but happy to have you both with us tonight to talk about the classic 1927 Metropolis. So thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and popping your favorite drink with us as we talk movie spoilers. Now, who wants to give the synopsis of this film? Joe, hey, you haven't been here for a while.
I'll give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
Let me pull up names. Because, you can't tell without the scorecard. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, we all need that. It's hard to keep track of names.
Especially it's hard to keep track when you don't hear anybody being referred to by their names.
Right.
Because now you have to remember because you're reading interstitials.
Mm-hmm.
So Frederick Fredersen, he is the son of the guy who has created this beautiful modern city of Metropolis. He one day while he's watching the very broken down workers, and I'm talking like emotionally, because they show the workers exiting and the workers coming into the factory, and all of them just kind of have their head down and they're just kind of just really beaten down by life. They are living literally just to work, just to keep the machines running. Boy, does this film get political in a second. One day he witnesses in the factory a guy who doesn't release a valve quick enough, and just bodies just start flying, literally flying everywhere. It's just all these wonderful dummies just flying around. And I guess that's what kind of becomes his reasoning for backtrack a little more. You have Maria, who is kind of the leader of the resistance, and she keeps preaching that there is going to be a mediator, somebody who is going to come in to join the bottom working class with the upper class, and that is the role that Fred Air. I wish somebody would have pronounced these names once. I'd be able to be like, okay, that's how I'm going to pronounce it. That's going to be the role that he's going to be filling. He's going to fulfill this prophecy of being that mediator. At the same time, you have his father, who is trying to figure out what's going on with the uprising of the resistance movement, and he goes to Rotwang.
Yes.
Who is an inventor who has created, again, let's back up a little bit of an incel. He was in love with the elder Fredersen's wife, Hell.
Yes. Just Hell.
Hell.
They refer to it as Hell. Yeah.
Who died giving birth to her son. So he has created what is basically, by our standards now, has recreated her consciousness in the form of a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Who then gets co-opted and is given Maria's face so that she can then mislead the workers who are planning the revolt.
Yes.
Like, there's literally so many moving parts. Because, I mean, if you watch just...
This film is dense for a 1927 film. That's why watching this every time, it's like, there is a lot going on in here.
And there's a lot more going on now, because the version that I saw when I was in film school, like half an hour of this movie did not exist back then.
Right.
Like it was believed to be lost. And we can get into that later. That's got to do with the Nazis and all that.
All that. But yeah. So Ian, we'll start with you. We'll get into it, folks. Basically, there are a lot of moving parts. You've got a mad scientist. You've got a love interest. You've got a resistance. You've got class warfare in here. You've got a subplot with a guy that Freder saves, who poses as him because he swaps places with the guy. And after posing as the son, he's followed by his dad's assassin, right-hand man, who follows him.
Who looks like one Reverend Kane from Poltergeist 2 and 3.
Yes.
Also, the tall man from the Phantasm movies. And as Sean pointed out, because Sean was watching this with me this morning, Judge Doom from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And that's another thing that's going to be like an entire subplot of this fucking podcast, is how many movies did this influence? Because we're going to be
especially the scene, the big climactic scene where Rotwang takes Maria into the church. I mean, that's straight up Tim Burton's Batman. Like that's all there.
Todd Browning's Dracula too. It looked like the end of Dracula, the whole thing on the stairs. So there's a lot, man. I haven't seen Andor yet, but Sean told me that he was picking up a lot of cues from of Andor watching this, and I haven't watched it yet, so I don't know. But
and the thing is, this is 1927, folks. This is 90 some years old, and you watch some of the things they do in this film. It's damn impressive, because I mean, from the models of the city to they do a screen. Okay, we're talking 1927 here. They do the screenshot where Johan Fredersen's looking at a TV monitor, watching the things going on down below. You've got these special effects with Maria's consciousness, visage being transferred to the robot and doing that dissolve. And you have actual animated effects in here. You've got soft focus. You've got this surreal dream sequence that Frederer goes through, and you watch it and go, oh, you take those for advantage today, but you got to think back, 1927, like some of this shit wasn't done before.
Well, he's looking at a screen and TV didn't exist yet. So when he's doing video conference calls like you and I are doing, the three of us are doing right now, like it's nothing, and it is nothing. 1927, they'd be looking at this and being like, who are these three wizards that are able to speak each other through the screen?
Well, I mean, that's the thing is, I remember in Aliens, that was the first time that I recall being aware of the possibility of having like a video teleconference when Ripley gets Burke on that little screen and he's kind of waking up in bed. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is that kind of the same thing where Freder's talking to his kind of foreman down on the floor of the factory when the kind of the uprising is happening. And yeah, I mean, it's all there. One of the things that's very impressive is I don't know how much camera trickery versus just having a literal army of extras. But I mean, during the Tower of Babel sequence, you have what look like hundreds and hundreds of people, like
apparently 36,000.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe it.
36,000 extras.
Yeah.
And there you know there are riots and conflicts and stuff. Different. It's almost like the end of Blazing Saddles, where you've got the proletariat and the upper class kind of pouring into the streets and conflicting. But today it's kind of easy to compartmentalize that and say, oh yeah, I've seen Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. It's all digital extras. But no, Joe, as you point out, they'd actually go out and hire and costume and coordinate people to do these great melees back in the 20s. I mean, it is truly phenomenal. My only gripe is that this is before television, but it's also before the art of editing. Because I mean, you say that there is a half hour missing. I pine for those days because I felt almost every minute of this 2.5 hours. And I'd seen Metropolis before. I think I'd seen this cut at the Music Box because I recognized the opening kind of prologue title sequences are talking about they found parts of it in Argentina and stuff. The Music Box had a restoration of it. This is a long time ago. That was the first and only time I'd seen it before watching it for the show. There is something about seeing it in an art house theater. They have the organist doing the accompaniment. I mean,
nice.
It was pretty wild.
Amazing.
But watching it at home, it's like, yeah, I've been watching this same sequence of these two people looking longingly at each other for 3 minutes. I get it. I don't need dialogue. I get the fluttering eyes. But, that's neither here nor there. I'm just being grumpy.
That was also an entirely different style of filmmaking because you had to be able to tell everything visually. So I really appreciate that. There was an entire sequence that looked to be missing that was then edited back in because it didn't match. Because you can see here when it was the new footage that was found and they weren't able to completely clean up. And that was the entire sequence where the father's assassin goes to Josephus's house?
Yeah, Josephat. Yeah.
Josephat. That's what it was. He goes to Josephat's house. That entire thing was missing from this movie. I guess it didn't exist for 100 years.
Well, even before that, the sequence where you basically have a harem for the young men of the rich folk to where they can go to pick basically a interest either of the day or of the whatever, but they have this whole garden of life sequence that was missing forever that they restored, where you have ladies who are, and this is before Hays Code, and you can tell there are some, they're dressed up, but they're dressed up in seductive clothing and that, and that's how we are introduced to Frederer, because Frederer is there visiting the garden and he finds kind of someone he's interested in. And then I love this, just out of nowhere, Maria shows up with a huge group of the kids of the workers because she teaches them. And then she brings them up just to introduce them to this garden. And it's like, that's when Frederer goes, oh, hey, who's she? And that's what lured him basically down into the work area. And then he's like, wait, what's going on down here? Because he had no clue about the workers.
It was at that point that Sean went, wait a second. Megalopolis. Like, yeah, Coppola was trying to make this.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Oh, yeah. Watching it again after seeing Megalopolis now, I'm like, I knew there were similarities before, but then watching it again, I'm like,
yeah, it's beat by beat.
He was totally trying to do a modern Metropolis.
And I can appreciate that because I'm one of the very few defenders of Megalopolis. I think it's a wonderful movie. But this is why it's kind of hard to watch and talk about Metropolis as an actual film in the way that you usually criticize movies, because it is so foundational. But you think about it like, okay, why was she able to bring these kids up into this, this garden? Where's the security? How is it that the son of this, multi-billionaire industrial ruler of this city didn't know how the sausage was made? I mean, that's kind of one of the perils of silent film, and it really frustrated me in here, is that when you get the dialogue title cards, it's the summary. It is like one line of dialogue. You can see them like mouthing entire conversations that you are not privy to. I'm like, no, I really want to know what they're saying because I have questions. But the point of it is, like, Coppola, yes, he's paying homage to Metropolis, but in doing so, that Megalopolis, as goofy as it is, makes a lot more sense.
Oh, it does.
Capital S than some of the stuff that we see in Metropolis.
Yeah, it does. But for that part, for me, that wasn't, I guess, that big of a deal. I just love how all of the characters that you have here in the storylines cross each other and such, and especially what they do with Maria, because every filmmaker must have watched, any action filmmaker must have watched the last 20 minutes of this film. Because if you look at this action sequence from when Fredder gets sick, he gets ill, and they have him, and he has the dream sequence in which Maria shows up as the Whore of Babylon, basically the rider of the
thing,
the Beast of the Seven Heads, and she's dressed up as that, and then they intercut that with her performing in front of all those rich guys, and they're all looking at it, and then they tell the story about how she's putting on these performances, and every night the guys are beating the shit out of each other over her. And then we go from there to her going down and getting the workers all razzled, but Johan Fredersen, the dad of Fredder, thinks he's using her to help stop the resistance, to give him a reason to kill the resistance. Meanwhile, Rotwang is putting one over on John, and he's programmed her to go destroy the machines that'll destroy the city. You have Fredder going to look for her. Everybody thinks she's the bad guy when it's actually the robot, and you get that wonderful sequence where they're chasing her, and then they end up crossing paths. So initially they're chasing actual Maria after she escapes Rotwang. Yeah. And so you're like, oh shit, the crowd's going to burn the wrong person. But then they clash with the universal party going on, led by Maria with the rich folk. They clash, and all of a sudden they start chasing the robot, and they throw her on the fire. And I'm like, yes. But I love, especially this final sequence of everything, how it comes together, and it's just like, I'm watching, you're engrossed. You're like, how is this played out? Especially, you got the two groups clashing, you get the workers down in there, and they're actually turning on themselves. Someone forgot the kids. I mean, the last,
and that's the thing. I the first time I saw Metropolis, I've seen it twice, as I mentioned. I was enamored with it. I think partially because I was finally seeing a capital I important film. I was like, wow, they really did a lot, 100 years ago with, compared to what we have now. But watching it again, I love it in the sense that I appreciate it's a technical achievement, but I hate the story because it is one of those, what I hate in a movie is a message or an allegory that is put forth without consideration for how real people might interact with it, or if it's trying to say something about actual people, it forgets to put actual people in the movie. Because the workers, who are initially very sympathetic in the story, they are literally being ground into the meat to feed this machine. At the end, they're the ones who, yay, let's destroy the machine, and they flood the city, and you can see them literally dancing around the ruins, and they forget their children. Like, these are not actual people. The movie is trying to say that we should be sympathetic to them, but they're also collectively just a bunch of morons.
Well,
they're very easily led.
They're right, and that's sheep.
And that is not a heroic narrative. Because the other idea is, well, you've also got the kind of the aristocrats who are, they're bawdy and wild and lascivious, and they'll beat each other up over an attractive woman. And that's another kind of a statement. All of these are like really broad generalizations, but I'm watching it and thinking, yeah, this all sounds like, some kind of like a college Marxist railing against the sun for being born without actually having known anybody, working class, upper middle class, any of this stuff. It seemed overtly political, but not at all human, much like the Maria bot.
Which, incidentally, I do want to talk about the Maria bot and Fritz Lang's relationship with the Nazis, because it mirrors this pretty well. But we'll talk about that later.
We'll touch on that, but I want to go back to what you're saying. The thing is, though, where they were dancing around, and also where the guys were turning on each other, in the best way they can for a sci-fi film in 1927, it has been implied that a lot of their behavior is because of the robot of what Rotwang had created. So they aren't acting like normal humans necessarily. They're acting more like followers because of her. She has some sort of power. That's why you have the references to the woman riding the beast and coming in the fall of Babylon, basically. But it's implied that she has a power, and in this cut at least you get more of that, because that's what ends up Frederer ends up getting sick, is because of, it's implied something that she's done necessarily, because she shows up next to her dad and suddenly he starts tripping balls like something fierce.
Well,
and then
but again, it's sloppy storytelling, and I don't know if there's more stuff missing, or if
there is more stuff missing,
or if language is painted with a too broad a brush, because there's a difference between a mad scientist programming a robot and putting kind of a human skin on it to impersonate someone to bring them on side, versus imbuing her with magical powers of casting spells over people. Because at one point, the workers, when they meet Maria Bot, someone's like, hey, this doesn't really sound like anything you've said before at all. And you've been this leader of this revolution for what we understand to be years. They have an underground resistance cave, beneath the factory. Right. So the whole idea of like, well, I guess Maria's talking different now. There's nobody speaking up saying, wait a second, none of this is what you want us to do. What now? So again,
only one person.
Only
one person.
Right. And that's the thing. And I understand the whole thing about like where it was in the early part of last century, but this is between World Wars I and II. So this is not a perfect kind of Nazi allegory. Had this been 10 years, well, not exactly 10 years later, but something like that, it would have made a bit more sense. I think we're looking back on it now. It's like, yeah, this is just like Hitler. I'm like, Hitler was still probably getting kicked out of art school around this time.
He was trying to warn them, because this kind of things happen in the past. You end up with these cults of personalities that do end up bringing down an entire empire. I mean, it happened a decade later in Germany.
No, I understand that, but that was actually based on, it was too broad. There were no allegations, no real enemies in this movie for people to rail against and get masses of people on side. What was going on in Germany, you can understand, because of the defeat of World War I and the poverty and the need to rebuild the national character, all that stuff. That's one thing. Here, it's an allegory about the rich and the poor and the head and the hands needing a heart. That's all great, but I think it was much sort of better covered in The Matrix in some ways. And again, I'm looking back on something that was not. It was the beginning of filmmaking in terms of science fiction. So I got to give it a little bit of grace. But it's frustrating watching it, thinking I don't think Fritz Lang thought much of whatever he was trying to critique here, and it just left me really cold.
Do you know who else said that? Fritz Lang.
Okay.
Fritz Lang said that he was politically naive when he made this movie. So it does,
and that's fine, and it's nice that he admitted that. But again, it's like, if you're going to spend all of this time making a movie that says something, I feel like you should have something to say. Otherwise, I'm watching it thinking, oh, that's kind of cute. It's like, Little Junior's Guide to How the Real World Works. And then, talk to me in 20 years after you've learned something. And
I did say while watching this movie, it is a very Marxist movie.
Oh, yeah.
Everything about this movie politically is pro-Marxism. And yeah, Fritz Lang did feel later on, and I don't know if it's also because he was married to the writer and then they divorced, and I don't know if that could figure into why.
And now we're back into Stepford Wives territory.
Sorry, I missed that one too. Damn. So yeah, and actually, what the hell? This movie was kind of in the way that Maria is a Trojan horse to the workers, to kind of be like, hey, you can kind of swing them our way. Joseph Goebbels and Adolf Hitler decided after seeing this movie that they needed Fritz Lang to make Nazi propaganda movies. And I guess their idea was, hey, he can be our Maria because he made this movie that we could get him because he can communicate with the working class. So yeah, basically Joseph Goebbels went to him one night and said, yeah, the Fuhrer would like you to start making movies for us now. And Fritz Lang yeah, I'll give that some thought. Fucking left Germany immediately. He knew what was going to happen if he said no.
I'm going to call you Monday. Let me sleep on it.
Place to talk it over with the wife.
Let me sleep on it. Yeah.
I sleep on it. I'm going to be sleeping on that ocean liner that's heading to Paris. So he made the right decision because, I mean, he made a lot of great movies in the United States after that.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that I kind of found that funny because it was like they kind of wanted him to be Maria in that sense that people trust you. You've made a couple movies that the working class likes, so you can make us look good. And then he was like, yeah, I ain't doing that shit.
Yeah. Sure. Tell you what, write me up a treatment. I'll see you Tuesday in my office. Booking a ship.
Yeah, I will be there Tuesday at 10 a.m. I swear.
I swear.
No, he made the right decision because had he said no, we probably
would never got M for sure. Or
I think this took place after M. M was like 1931, so this took place after M.
I got
after M and the first couple of Dr. Mabuse movies.
Wait. Hold on. M was 31. This is 27.
Yeah.
Right. No, he means
they saw, I don't know when they saw it, but apparently this was the movie that made them think we need to get Fritz Lang on our side because he can help bring people over. So for all I know, they might have seen it in 1934, but
yeah.
And that's also apparently the reason a lot of this footage was missing and turned up in Argentina, which is always that's the southern hemisphere is where all these fucking movies end up being found because that's always the last place they send them. And they were too expensive to ship back then. So they're like, just do whatever with them. We don't need them anymore. That's why a lot of times when they're found in Australia, New Zealand, somewhere in South America, because they're probably just in a warehouse somewhere.
That's where they've been finding Doctor Who episodes and such that were lost. They find them at somebody who worked at a TV station at the time that and they got the reels down in their basement, or someone finds out Grandpa worked the projector of such and such, and he ended up keeping the reels.
Oh yeah, there was a clip from a Lon Chaney movie, and it's now the only 3 minutes in existence of this one movie. Apparently, a piece of it broke off in someone's projector in Brooklyn, and the projector just stopped working, and they couldn't fix it. And the rest of the film wound up wherever, but they found this one little 3-minute strip, and they're like, that's all that exists in this Lon Chaney movie now. So.
Yeah, was that the piece that got lodged in the projector, and they found it in there? Wow. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's the only part of this movie that exists now. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't want to derail this anymore, but I'm fascinated. But so this movie, do people know about like what the rest of the movie was supposed to be, and this is the only artifact of it, or is it like a mystery? Like, what the hell is this? Where does this belong?
The Nazis apparently kept notes on what they removed.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm talking specifically about that Brooklyn thing, not.
That one I don't. That one. I forgot what movie it was. I got to look that up later. But yeah, okay. They know what the rest of the movie was supposed to be. I thought we were back to talking about the missing stuff from Metropolis.
Go for it.
We know what was missing from Metropolis because the Nazis kept records of what they would cut out of movies, and they kept records of what was cut out of this. And that's how they were able to piece it back together when they found this new footage. They were like, okay, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. And if you notice, there's a couple of segments here where it was just writing on the screen. And they talk about Johann getting into a fight with somebody, and it's just...
Rotwang, yeah.
Rotwang getting into a fight with somebody.
You're missing the action sequence between Johann and Rotwang because when Rotwang is confessing to Maria after he's used her image to create Maria Bot, he still has her. She didn't die. He just used her image. but he's talking to her about his plan, going, yeah, I pulled one over on old Federer, you know, she's actually going to destroy the machine. Apparently Rotwang and Federer get into a fight, and apparently he knocks Rotwang out, and during that Maria escapes, but you don't have that sequence. The fight.
Yeah, we see Rotwang waking up later. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We see Rotwang waking up, and we see her leaving Rotwang's place, but which again, Rotwang, you look at him and then you look at the blind man in Frankenstein. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Or even Pretorius in Bride of Frankenstein. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of
you watch this movie now, and I totally get the problems that you mentioned, Ian, and yeah, it does have those images, but every time I watch this film, and I adore this film, I've grown to adore it. When I first saw it, I saw the 90-minute cut or whatever that they only had by they had just found like 5 minutes of extra footage, and Italian director, was it Gregory, in the early 80s, he put a soundtrack to it with modern music.
I've heard about this. Wasn't it like all synth or something, or is it?
Yeah. No. It's all newer. It was new age type music. The soundtrack's awesome. I have it. But he had released it, and that's when I first saw it. Was that version? Because my dad took me to the Oriental in Milwaukee, which is one of the two. There were the two art house films. There was the Avalon and the Oriental, which were the one screen only thing. But they showed they showed a few more of the obscure films. So I saw Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings there. That was when I got scared to shit about Gollum, because Gollum was scary as hell, and I was very young, and we watched Bakshi's Gollum, and then my parents, being boomer 80s parents that they were, when I went to bed, they would stand outside my door and go, "My precious."
Those are 80s parents, all right.
Giorgio Moroder's version is the one that I saw initially with this, and it has a 80s soundtrack to it. There's a great song on there, "Blood from a Stone," which is, I used to listen to that on repeat.
I've never seen that version, actually.
No?
I've heard of it, but I've never actually seen it.
It's cool. The music is very cool to see the modern music, because they picked tracks that were very fitting, but it is the shorter version. And then I didn't really know about the other versions until later on. I've got one of the cheapo DVDs for like $1 they used to have it because it was public domain. So
and that one doesn't have any music usually.
No, that was really bad, and now there's lots of different versions, but watching the complete version, at least I like it because I like the other story subplots and such. And I grew to adore this. I appreciated it okay for the music, but as a kid, I didn't understand. I'm like, oh, cool. They took an old, I didn't know the history of it at all. And then as I've watched it more often over the years, I've grown to appreciate it more. And it is one of those, like you said, capital I influential films, to where even with the problems with some of the stories and the broad strokes and the way they do things, what they do in this film, some of the stuff they're still doing today, as far as the stories, your characters. I mean, your main characters, you've got your good guy, you got your bad guy, you got your love interest, the fact you've got the robot. And we've got to give a shout out to the actress who plays Maria, Brigitte Helm. I love her performance in this, because it's silent, so she has to emote. But she does this wonderful thing when she's Maria Bot, and when she does it, and it's just usually a twitch of her eye, but she gets this most maniacal look on her.
She'll just like move her head around unnaturally, and you got to do something.
Yeah, and that's, as much as I hate saying someone should just remake Metropolis and get it over with, that's one of the things that drove me crazy, because I'm like, okay, she's acting like a robot, which again, they're plotting brand new territory. Who knows what a robot acts like? They're kind of twitchy, and I guess it's more sophisticated than they probably should have had a right to be in 1927. But again, just from a character standpoint, does no one notice that Maria, our passionate, eloquent, beautiful young revolutionary, is all of a sudden like going into spasms and spouting crazy stuff? I'm like, what is going on here?
No, but it's a
seriously,
cult of
what is no? They're cults of personality work because these people are still recognizably human. I guarantee if Adolf Hitler was up there on stage, I know he had his drug problems and all that stuff, but if he started like talking about we must get rid of people, no, someone would have been like, wait, what's going on up there? I don't quite understand.
Well, the only person that does notice, and this is a flaw, is Freder.
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing that right?
I don't know if it's Freder or Frieder. Frieder sounds more German.
Frieder sounds probably more correct.
Yeah.
Is that Americanizing everything and fucking it up? Freder.
Frieder.
Frieder sounds more southern. That guy Frieder.
I do like our Rottweiler character in here, though. He's an interesting character. I mean, he's a guy, he lost his hand. I love how they play into that he lost his hand. He's pining for Hel, who was the wife of the rich guy. He's got a window down. He knows like everything. He like knows the revolutionary how to get down to the tunnel. He's got his own plan. He's just a wonder. You look at him going, okay, so every mad scientist we've ever gotten in cinema after this has been pulled from Rottweiler.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you look at the Hammer Frankenstein films and the labs, and the Frankenstein films for that matter. Yeah. I mean, all this great equipment, and you kind of mentioned this, Mark, the scene where Maria, the bot, is being brought to life. I mean, there's some stuff I'm watching that, and I'm like, I still don't know how they pulled that off, like with the effects like that. It looks like I'm watching genuine movie magic. I loved his hand. Sorry, go ahead.
I said that's what we were commenting too. Watching this is how did they pull that off in 1927?
It looked really good. Like the kind of ovular energy waves that are kind of like going up and down Maria. They look even and perfect. It didn't look like something like, well, we're gonna kind of get it's gonna a little janky. I mean, it's magical.
Well, and also, go ahead. I'll make this point after you're done.
Oh, Rotwang's hand is supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be like a mechanical hand.
Yeah.
But it looks like a mixture of like mechanics and latex. I don't know what was going on there, but it looked great. My only problem with him, again, I get he's a mad scientist, but this whole idea of he wants to use Maria to get people to destroy the machines. He doesn't seem to understand that that's going to destroy the very society and technology that he has built his life, creating.
I don't think he cares anymore. I think
he doesn't care at this point,
right?
Though.
Again, but where is that in the story? He's opining for Hel, this his lost woman, but that doesn't translate at all until I don't even think it really comes up in the movie that he's got like this kind of a weird death wish. He seems to want to get back at Joe. Friederson.
I don't think it's a death wish so much as they're trying to convey that he's so driven by getting his revenge. He's not thinking necessarily clearly. I mean,
but revenge for what? I mean, she's dead. Well, she gave birth during childbirth. He was jealous, but
I think they established he was with her first,
and
she left him for the rich guy. I think that's part of why he wants to destroy everything.
I maybe that was a title card I missed because I didn't pick up on that at all. And also, and on top of that, Joe, again, is he arrogant? Is he an idiot? What's going on there? Why the hell would you hire that guy if you knew that he had a thing for your ex-wife and left? Never mind. Forget
harbors a grudge because she left him. But I kind of see it as Richard III in a way. If I can't prove a villain, if I can't prove a hero and enjoy these well-spoken days, I'm going to prove a villain. And I think that's what it is. I think he's just so driven by anger towards him, wanting to destroy everything. He doesn't care if he dies himself. He's like, fuck it. He's one of those madmen who's like, you know what? I got nothing left to lose. I'm going to destroy everything, and if I die on the way, then whatever.
I can see where you're coming from, but again, this feels very comic booky to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to take this movie seriously because it's so important, but I can't take it seriously beyond anything having to do with the aesthetics or even the performances. Like you asked me, what do I think of Metropolis as a story? I'm like, it'd be great if someone turned it into a novel and told an actual story, because this is not one.
I don't know. Maybe my overactive imagination just fills in the blank on some of them. Thinks of what could be versus what's being presented on screen. For me,
that's the thing, is the art of filmmaking is presenting things on screen and telling a story.
I mean,
otherwise, there's no differentiation between this and the script of Transformers 2. Like how did Megatron get up from the Antarctic ice? Oh well, maybe one of the Autobots carried him. Other people might say that's a giant plot hole, and Michael Bay is a hack.
Here's the wait, hang on, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, I brought up Transformers 2.
What I was going to say is this movie isn't remembered for its great storytelling, though. This movie is remembered for its visuals and its visual flair, and how that's how that's kind of laid the groundwork for so many movies in the last century. There is one other thing Ian said in comparison. You compared this to the Universal Frankenstein movies, and earlier I compared it to Dracula. The cinematographer is Carl Frund, who shot a lot of those Universal movies.
Oh, okay. That explains it.
Kurt Siodmak, who wrote The Wolfman, is in this movie. This had a lot of people who wound up in Hollywood in the early 30s, and Universal was doing a lot of that. Was doing a lot of German expressionism in their films, and it's strictly because of Fritz Lang, Carl Frund. Edgar Ulmer was an acolyte of some of these guys, and he ended up at Universal. So that's why you want to make a visual comparison between these and the Frankenstein movies and things like that. That's why you're gonna see that.
Well, especially
sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, Ian.
Oh, I was gonna say like Bride of Frankenstein with like the little person inside the glass jar. I look at that. I'm like, again, how? It looks so good. But yeah, it's great.
Especially for 1935, it still looks good now. But in 1935, it must have been like, who is this sorcerer?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing that's why I loved it when we were doing the pre-code films. That was always fun, and that's why King Kong is always one of my favorite too. This film and King Kong, and not necessarily. Again, I will say no. The story definitely is not great in Metropolis. I guess I just fill in the blanks, and I just love the entertainment value of it because of visuals and that of its era. That in King Kong, you look at what King Kong did, it borrowed some things from Metropolis as far as how it handled miniatures and that. I mean, you look at the use of miniatures. You watch this, and I'm just like, this more looks like from the 50s than 27. I mean, from all the work they do. I mean, because they give you a city with moving freaking planes and cars. You get that shot where Frieder gets in his car, and then they got the little scene where the car is actually driving through the freeway, and as he's going down the road, the lights go on, and then as his car passes, the lights go off. And you just watch that, you go, this is almost 100 years ago, and you look at this going, the visuals, this is insane what they were doing with big fat cameras. We're not talking little cameras either. These are the big fat film cameras they're shooting this shit with. And you're just like, man, that to be in an audience in 1927 to see this for the first time had to be like,
oh yeah, I mean the matte paintings and the model work on here is extraordinary. And I honestly don't know that it's been matched. I mean, Blade Runner looks cool and everything, but I mean there's shots in this movie of cityscapes that look like they were straight out of Blade Runner.
Yeah,
but they're even more impressive. partially because of the layering and the modeling you brought up, Mark, the planes. I mean, like, it's so weird because it's this futuristic city, but they've got these like little biplanes like flying, around that, like space capsules or something. And you look at this and you're like, oh, this is The Fifth Element. This is Attack of the Clones, but 80 years before that. And it looks, because of the perspective and the layering on of like something's going on this plane and that, I think they invented a plane of dimension to show some of these cityscapes. It's unbelievable.
Well, yeah, and you just think about, we get into the scientific part of it, his scientific lab. You look at it, and we've watched so many sci-fi films, we go, oh, that's a scientific lab. You look at it, I mean, when he's put Maria in with the connectors, and you've got the robot, and you look at the robot, and it's just like, but man, to be back then and working on that that had to be just crazy that they came up with that. And it is influential. You watch this film, and then you just mentioned like 3 or 4 titles. We've mentioned at least a dozen. You watch this, you go, oh, that's that. Oh, that's that. This film, literally, they've got this wonderful sequence that's intense with the kids, because everybody's left their kids below because Maria's got all the adults in such a frenzy. They decide, yes, down with the oligarchy. So they all get in the elevators and they go and they leave. And Maria, a good Maria's down there, she's like, hey, and all of a sudden a bunch of kids show up, and then she hits the drum, and like everybody's kids still down there. And then John decides to flood the place. And there's this scene where you've got the city, you got the little ant type figures, and you got water coming down. And then you got hundreds of kid extras piling onto a stairway. It's just like, man.
Oh, yeah. There was this one, I don't know how well coordinated or rehearsed it was. It didn't look rehearsed at all, but the sequence where Frieder busts through the bars at the top of that staircase with the help of other people, because that's the only way they're going to get out. And then you got these hundreds of kids trying to get up the stairs, as you mentioned. There's one kid I noticed. It's like this rickety railing. He like climbs on the opposite side of the railing to kind of monkey his way up. I'm like, that looked dangerous. Like, I don't know if there was mats or anything down there, or if the director's like, oh shit, no, don't do that. That's but it added to the realism of that moment. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, you get your kids in peril to the utmost, and it's like, that's you're watching that, and Frieder, he scale, him and his buddy Joseph, they scale the freaking thing so they can get to the door to save the kids. You've got a buddy sacrificing himself because the people turn on Maria Bot, gets the people to turn on Frieder, who's supposed to be the mediator, and they turn on him, and his buddy ends up getting killed.
Georgie,
yeah. Georgie ends up getting killed. The guy who whose place he took. So that's interesting, full circle. And
yeah, I need a billionaire son to show up at my job and go, hey, I want to switch lives with you.
Yeah, right. Well, they even address that. Because when he switches places with Georgie shows up and they're driving. He's like, Frieder says, go straight to my place. And Georgie gets in the car. He's like, okay, we're going to go straight to his place. And then he's like, oh, look at all this money in here. And then he's like, oh, look, they're throwing stuff. What's this flyer? Oh, there's a club I'm going to go to. So he just takes his money. He goes, let's go to the club. And he goes, lives it up for like however many nights. He goes out on a bender. And I love that little story they do with Georgie. Like, he's like, yeah, no, I'm going to go party.
And then when he finally gets back in the car after however many days, the Thin Man is sitting there waiting for him. And it's super creepy. And yeah.
The Thin Man guy is there. And yeah, I love all these elements in here. So you've got a little bit of your noir angle in here as well with the hitman and keeping an eye on the son. And
immediately his father turns on him immediately. He goes, yeah, I need you to keep tabs on my son. I need you to track every move he makes. Like, damn, Dad.
Well, I love that one sequence too, because Frieder goes to his dad and goes, there was an explosion. And I do love his dad. I love this little sequence here where he goes after Josephat and he goes, why am I hearing about the explosion from my son rather from you? And if you watch that like whole little sequence, I'm like, we've seen this type of scene play out like hundreds of times after this movie. This exact same thing of the boss finding out from someone else and then his lackey, him dismissing him. And then you get that moment where Josephat's like, yeah, you know what that means, right? If I get dismissed by him, I got to go to the workers. And he pulls out a gun and was going to shoot himself.
Yeah, which also says a lot about how the workers' lives are viewed by the upper crust. It's like, wait, you want me to be one of them?
He'd rather shoot himself.
Well, yeah, because he knows, unlike Frieder for some reason, what that means, what banishment entails. That's another weird thing about this story. And again, I got to stop thinking about this in terms of a story that makes sense. I get the same trouble when I talk about giallo films on my series. But when Joe is like, hey, Josephat, and apparently what's up to these names? He's like, why am I hearing about this explosion from my son instead of you? Like, literally, this just happened. Like, the guy was up in his office talking to him. There's no way he would have known about this unless someone who was actually there got in the elevator and went up to the office building. There was at no point. It's not like Josephat ignored a call or something like that. Just like I don't. Again, whatever.
Well, his people didn't get a hold of him.
No, apparently he was the people that was supposed to get a hold of him.
Yeah, he was supposed to have.
He was that people.
He was the people, which gives you an interesting perspective on their society up there too. I mean, okay, so they shelter the kids, at least the rich kids, from how things actually work, and then but there's this hierarchy even amongst the rich to where like, yeah, you didn't know about this thing that happened just 3 minutes ago, and now and then there was like a little bit of time, and he's like, and now why am I hearing of this? He's like, yeah, you're shut down. You're gone. And I'm like, damn. I'm like, they really make Frederson Sr. just this guy. He just ruthless guy. Yeah. Like, damn.
What I like about the performance though is that he looks very sympathetic. He looks sad and he looks tired and overburdened, but he's also a cutthroat. It's weird because like what we know about his character from his interactions and what other people say and think about him is much different than his demeanor. He's not like, he doesn't look like the Thin Man looks like the villain of this piece.
Yeah.
Calculating, very cold, but even he, like later in the film, he starts going like, wait a second, what? But I do love that the visual contrast. It subverts the expectations, as the kids like to say.
Yeah, you look at him, he's like, oh, kind old man, and you're like, no, he's a really harsh, shrewd businessman who's a dick, and it's like.
He's got the visuals of what George Bailey Sr. from It's a Wonderful Life. Just this kind of guy who's working. He's just tired, doing the best he can. But no, he'll slit your throat over a missed update.
One of my favorite scenes that makes me laugh all the time is in the big climactic scene when they're actually burning Maria, which again, I love Helm's performance in this because she's like, they're tying her up and she's just like, yeah, tie me up, I don't care. She's like
wild.
And that a Passion of Joan of Arc. Carl Dreyer's Passion of Joan of Arc. You could see that in that final sequence.
But the real Maria is still chased by Rotwang. He chases her up into the church, like we said, literally the end of Batman. And he captures her, and then Frieder gets into a fight with him, and then the dad is seeing this going on, and then Frieder ends up knocking Rotwang over the rail, but the dad thinks it's his son for a minute. So there's this wonderful extended scene where the dad's just like frozen, like, and you got the foreman and his buddy, and they're kind of looking at him like, it makes me laugh every time because they're just like, yo, dude, you okay, man? You need like an edible or something, man? You're like, almost they don't poke him, but they're just looking at him like, what the hell's wrong with him?
Well, it's interesting because that freak out pose mirrors what happened with Frieder earlier, the thing that sent him into that nightmare coma. So maybe it's just they're genetically predisposed to irrational freakouts.
But no, I liked Helm's crazy performance. I know within the context of the film, you're like, how does anyone think she is still the regular Maria? But as far as just her look at everything, I look at her going, yeah, that's like every other crazy villain that comes after this movie. And I know we've said that a lot tonight, but it's true. You watch this movie and you can see why people were still talking about it, because you see so much that was taken from this movie.
Well, we've also had 100 years of filmmakers who loved this movie constantly reminding us in some way of its existence. I mean, you guys just mentioned Batman.
Mm-hmm.
The aesthetic of Gotham City in the Tim Burton Batman films is clearly Metropolis. Joker falls over the railing, like Lane goes here, up in the belfry. So, like, there's God. It's one of those movies that is undeniably one of the most influential films ever made. Because even if you didn't spot it yourself, that director will tell you he was influenced by Metropolis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you think about it, we've also talked about Phantom of the Opera, and we've talked about it before, and that was 2 years prior to this. That was the influential film for horror. What I love about both of them is that they involve the crowd getting it. We don't have like just one we don't just have like one hero dispatching the villain. We have like a group of people dispatching. Here we've got a dispatching Maria bot. In Phantom, you have the group tossing, the Phantom overboard into the river. It's like
it's a Fritz Lang trope, it seems, to have like the mob. Because you have it here, you have it at the end of M. You also have it in Fury, which, if you haven't seen that, that's a great one with Spencer Tracy and the woman who played Juno in Beetlejuice.
Oh, okay.
Sylvia Sidney.
Yeah.
So there's another tie in to Tim Burton and Fritz Lang. That has a big mob scene where they attack a jail. So it's a trope of Fritz Lang, apparently. Well, Phantom of the Opera wasn't his.
No, but I mean, just of that era in general, it seems like a lot of these films where you have like a baddie, at least one of the baddies gets taken out by the crowd, not just by the one guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the time when there was the union fights, so that's probably what's making that visual kind of important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a product of its time, but just watching these early films, that's what I love about it. Even if the story isn't exactly the best or whatnot, and some of the other things, you just look at this going, man, my favorite filmmaker has watched this movie many times.
Oh yeah.
It was like when we did Alfred Hitchcock, when we did 8 films from Alfred Hitchcock, and you watch early Alfred Hitchcock. There's a reason why they call these guys influential directors, because everyone that we love, all the big successful directors who have just wonderful films, people like, you could trace their roots of certain scenes or certain approaches to the story or whatnot to those influential directors.
And these guys didn't have anybody to go off of.
Right.
That's what makes it really spectacular. You get a lot of people, imitating Fritz Lang, imitating Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock and Fritz Lang weren't imitating anybody.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I'm curious to see what the next 25, 50 years of filmmaking, if it even is an art form as we know it in the next half century, is going to be like. Because now you hear people talk about, I'm going for something very Burton-esque. You know, I just feel like people are going to be copying the copies of the copiers, and something like Metropolis is going to be appreciated by film students and cineasts. But as far as like people who are making big popular entertainment, they might be getting their ideas from Metropolis, but it's filtered through like a number of directors who are perhaps great, perhaps not so great, perhaps once were great, but have been kind of dissolved into hacks. Sorry, I got to, give it to Mr. Burton on that one. Dumbo. Well, but yeah, that's the thing. Is like, are we bringing up people now who have the distinct voice and invention to become the Fritz Langs and Alfred Hitchcocks of this generation, or are we going to be stuck with these are the artifacts of the past and we're just dealing with like Xerox influences?
Well, I mean, Burton will be the first one to tell you that his movies are Fritz Lang and Mario Bava.
Yeah.
So he literally devoted 20 minutes to Mario Bava in the last Beetlejuice movie. So, it's. I wonder, are people going to go back and look at these older films? They're going to be like, okay, because that's kind of what.
No, I think the answer is no, because if you're talking about younger filmmakers, I mean, because Tim Burton was a younger filmmaker when he did,
Pee-wee's Big Adventure,
Frankenweenie and Big Adventure and Batman, all that stuff. So when he's making these movies, this is only like 50 years removed from Metropolis, right? Now we're talking about something that's almost 100 years removed from it. And you've got people now who forget about watching a 2.5-hour movie, forget about watching a black and white movie, forget about watching a movie where it's all music and you have to read the screen. Okay. It's like so many barriers on tops of barriers on tops of barriers. I'm concerned. I don't know if I need to be, but
well, not to mention, I say this a lot, the exploration factor is completely gone. Like a lot of the movies that I know now that are older movies would be movies that were on. Like I wanted to watch something late one night and I'm flipping through channels and there's a guy in a gorilla suit, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cheesy. But I end up watching it, and I'm like, oh, shit, I kind of like this. I kind of dig this. That's how I discovered the Marx Brothers, was flipping channels and going, hey, these guys look like things that were in the, parodied in Looney Tunes. And I was like, oh, shit, this is actually kind of funny. I don't know that it's ever going to happen anymore because now everything is sent directly to you based on what you already know. And that's something that I feel is hurting us as a culture because if you're only showing me things that I already know and are already in my wheelhouse anyway, how am I ever supposed to grow out of that and learn something new and see something that I never expected to see?
Right. I mean, you had two options. You could keep flipping channels or you could turn off the television and go do something else. Now, everything, to your point, is algorithmically curated. So you have not even an incentive to go outside your bubble. You don't even realize that you're in one.
Yeah.
Well, and you have so much. I mean, we're looking at 100 years ago. They weren't just cranking out movies left and like 2.5 hour movies left and right.
That's another thing. They weren't making them on these,
They were you didn't have the digital era. You didn't. I mean, I know we're gonna sound like get off my lawn. I like my lawn. I just gotta mow it. But I gotta work on my lawn more. But beside the point, but it is a true fact that I think that when things went real digital, even before that, but especially when things went digital and that, movie making took a hit as far as care of what you're telling the story. Because if you look at 1927, film wasn't cheap. You had 37,000 extra, but you're not making 10 films a month. You're not getting. Look at how many films we have just in the theater coming out that came out in May, not including the new content that was coming out on streaming. It is easy to stay in your wheelhouse because there is so much out there now that you don't have to stray away. Where back then in 27, you got 5 movie theaters, maybe in your general walking or biking area, and that's all that's showing on that one screen. And you maybe have 5 films being released a year, maybe. So you don't have a lot to choose from. It's what's ever playing at the theater is what you're going to watch.
Well, on top of that, I mean, this could be another 3 hours we could talk about this, I mean, you've also got the whole problem with the stuff that is in the theaters is IP driven, and it's usually remakes or sequels. Right. When you talk about Tim Burton's Batman, you ask someone today who's like 20 years old, and you're like, Tim Burton's Batman. I thought I only know about Affleck and Pattinson. Who is Tim Burton, and when did he wear the suit? Mm-hmm. You know, that's the kind of thing. We've got so many different iterations of this across so much different media that one that is almost 40 years old is almost bound to get lost in the shuffle. Forget about like who influenced the aesthetics of it.
There was something a couple years ago where like this younger person just got snapped at by everybody online because they were like, "Oh my God, what if Tim Burton made a Batman movie?" And there were just people yelling at this poor. This kid was like 15 years old. And I remember one guy tried to justify it on my timeline. He's like, "Well, why is he out there talking about it? Because he's fucking 15 and on the internet. He doesn't know that there's a Tim Burton Batman movie. Cut the kid some slack."
See, and for me,
he was 30 years old when that movie was made.
And see, for me, I look at his comment going, he recognized the style of Burton and goes, "Hey, that would be a fit for Batman." So I give him, even if he didn't know, I give him props for at least going, you know, Burton would probably make a good Batman movie. And you're like, tell you what.
Well, here's the thing. A couple of problems. One, if he's saying this a couple of years ago and he thinks, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if Tim Burton made a Batman movie?" Is he thinking about after he just finished watching Dumbo or one of his recent films? Because that's a damn travesty.
I've never seen Dumbo, so I can't comment on that.
Do not.
I've heard it's terrible.
The only reason to watch is for Eva Green, and there are much better sites where you can see her, quote unquote, perform. Anyway, but the other problem is, I don't know what forum this was where this kid said this thing, but I have a real. Twitter. Okay, well, but here's the thing that almost makes it worse.
Yeah.
Because on a live conversation like we're having right now, it's easy to say, "I don't know who that is. I don't get that reference." But when you're on social media, and I think this goes to sort of media literacy, I would never make the mistake, or at least I like to think that I wouldn't, of being engaged in something and asking a question in a comment section like, "Oh, who is that?" Or "What are you talking about?" You're on the same computer that will tell you, "Hey, did Tim Burton ever make a Batman movie?" And the answer won't yell at you.
You'd be amazed how hard it is for people to Google something for you.
Right, but that I think that leads into, in a way, the discussion we're having about like film history and film future. It's like people don't know to stop and ask questions or do research. They just know what they've been fed, and they don't know to ask these kinds of questions. But that's just me. Again, I'm joining you on the lawn, yelling at people.
I left that at it's a 15-year-old. If this was like a guy who's like writing an article for BuzzFeed, then you know what, have at him. But this is a 15-year-old kid who probably wasn't thinking straight. Just went, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if Tim Burton made a Batman movie?" It's a kid.
Yeah, I mean, it's great, and now it's part of a memeable conversation that we're having also on the internet. And I do cut him some slack, but also, I feel like he's 15. He should know that by the time you ask a question, you should have like 15 different methods or apps.
No, before you put it out
there.
You've got a good point there. At that age, you should know what you're getting into when you're making that post. If you don't, somebody failed you somewhere, because my kids, they're 20-somethings now, but even when they were growing up, they knew either how to phrase things or you just don't say it. They knew how to Google.
My point is, like, I've got a son who's very tech savvy in a way that I could never be, because it's all mutating so rapidly. So when I start to ask something like just around the kitchen table, he's like, "Oh yeah, I can look that up," or he's got the answer because he looked it up while I was thinking about asking the question. It's mad. My
kids do that, and actually, we'll have that where we'll have a discussion, and a question will come up in the discussion, and by the time I'm debating with him, he's, "Oh yeah, no, here it is. This is what it is," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." It's like we both learned something today. That's awesome.
Here's a question. What if that kid was dunking on Tim Burton by asking if, would it be great if he made a Batman movie, kind of implying that he never actually made a Batman movie?
Oh, that could be.
That kid's playing 4D chess.
It's like that line in Stand By Me where he says, "Did your mother ever have any kids that lived?"
Yeah.
Maybe that was the point. It's like, it'd be great if Tim Burton made an actual Batman movie instead of that shit he put out.
You never know, because it's lost in context. But and some things I will say probably are lost in context with a 100-year-old movie. But at the same time, for what Metropolis is, there's a reason we're talking about. There's a reason why it's been so influential. You look at what they do, and if you just put your brain into 100 years ago, which really sounds like a long time, but it's amazing seeing this. And like Phantom and like King Kong, you look at these early 20s and 30s films and what they were doing back then for the first time. I mean, Fritz, what he does in Metropolis, some of this stuff you did not see in film before. You just didn't, because there wasn't, so they didn't know how to go about it. They were just winging it, basically going, this is what I have imagined. And what they imagined has influenced filmmakers and such still today, and
I mean, literally last year, Megalopolis was inspired by this. So love that movie or hate it.
So we'll wrap it up here, but that, my thought with it is, even if with its problems that we look back at it today with its some of the storytelling in that, just watching the film as its body of work, especially from technical aspects and what it does for a film 100 years ago, it's worth a watch at least once for me, even if you don't quite care, just to see the visual medium of film, what they decided to do and how it affected them. Ian, your final thought with it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll be a gatekeeper on this one. This is, if you're gonna say that you love movies or you want to study film, you have to watch Metropolis. It's not only important, it's beautiful, it's puzzling, it's a mystery. I've been beating up on the story a lot because I love it, because it would be a perfect film for me, I feel like, if it made a bit more sense. But I mean, for something that's 98 years old, I'm looking forward to 2 years from now for the 100th anniversary. I'm hoping the Music Box or, kind of boutique theaters around the country really celebrate this movie. You could do like a 2-week block of programming, starting with Metropolis and then like leading on to the movies that it gave birth to. Maybe ending up with, bookend Metropolis and Megalopolis, but in the middle you've got, Blade Runner and, all this other dystopian kind of futuristic stuff, or even things you wouldn't think about that, elements of Metropolis show up in. And I think it'd be a great, and have lectures and guest speakers and all that stuff. It'd be a great education, I think, really open people up to seeing a movie like this on the big screen, because there's an entire generation possibly to have no idea what this movie is, have not seen it on the big screen, and I think really will be changed by seeing it presented that way.
Agreed. Joe, anything to add? Final thought with Metropolis?
It's one of those movies that without it, even the 60s Monster Kid revolution wouldn't happen, because that happened partially because of Forrest J. Ackerman and Famous Monsters of Filmland. And he started that magazine. He really started. I interviewed him. It was one of the final interviews before he passed away about 10 or so years ago, 15 years ago now, I think. And he just went on about how much he loved this movie. He was one of the biggest boosters of this film ever, and it inspired him so much that he started watching every monster movie, every sci-fi movie, every horror movie he could find, and he ended up kind of rejuvenating the love for the classic monsters in the 60s, which then got rejuvenated again in the 90s. So without this movie, there's a lot of film history that does not happen. And it's for a movie that flopped, because this movie cost 5 million francs and made 75,000
in 1927.
So this movie was a massive flop, but the people who did see it loved it so much as they continued to champion it. And then when TV came around, it was cheap, so it got thrown on TV, and an entire new generation discovered it. So without this movie, who knows what the Universal movies look like 5-6 years later. who knows? Tim Burton's films might be completely different. Blade Runner might not exist. So yeah, if no other reason, you have to see it just because it's the roots. It's the roots of cinema. You should learn where everything comes from. Yeah, I guess that's it. It's just my love for this is very much rooted in the love of cinema history.
Yeah. Joe, I know we're wrapping up, but I got a question. And I'm going to violate my own rule because I could probably look this up.
Yeah.
You said this movie, well, maybe it's something for homework for all of us if you don't. This came out in 2007. You said it flopped. What version of this flopped? I mean, we're looking at
this version, the longer version. The documentary that I watched on this stated that after the movie flopped, that's the last time the movie existed in its complete form. Because it started getting chopped up when it got sent around the world because it's like, oh yeah, this movie
yeah. Yeah, I just didn't know if it was like if there's like a 3-hour cut like that was shown and that was never seen again, or if it was like closer to this.
Whatever was shown was definitely never seen again. From the initial run, because cuts started being made immediately, but it was the Nazis in the 30s chopping it up that led to the movie getting cut down to like 90 minutes or something like that, something even shorter than that. Luckily, because they kept records, when the footage was found in Argentina, they were able to kind of piece things together. It would be great if, God, I missed it last year when you guys did Putting on the Ritz. That movie's just butchered.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we talked about it. There's a whole 20-minute section just forever gone, forever. They're just destroyed. So
way back on the shelf. There's a documentary called Voyage to Metropolis, and right in the first couple minutes, they mentioned that there were 36,000 extras. They mentioned the film was made for 5 million francs and made 75,000. Right in the beginning of the documentary. So yeah,
yeah, and that five. What you said, 5 million francs. About 21.
Well, you have to do a lot of converting here.
Yeah, you'd have to do a lot of converting, but that's some major money. Let's just put it down.
And you can see all of it on the screen. That's the great thing. Yeah.
All of it is on the screen. Absolutely.
It's a movie that's known for its visuals, and its visuals still hold up.
Yeah, that's the thing, is with it being as much practical as it is, it holds up still.
It's all practical. Yeah, everything's done in camera.
Yeah,
there was no option.
So thank you very much, Joe and Ian. Thank you to our live viewers who checked in tonight, and all of our listeners out there. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. I know that's a film that's been talked about many times, but I wanted to talk about it with this crew, and it's definitely did not disappoint. So thank you very much. Hope you found this interesting, and I hope you find other things interesting, like the content from my wonderful crew members. So this is their chance to get their license to shill. So please shill away. Joe, you got anything that you can bump, promote, shill?
Right now, nothing, because I finished writing the screenplay, and I just sent out the very final revisions.
Ooh,
so if it gets
exciting.
Who knows where it's going to go from here? The people who hired me for it seem to be happy, and let's hope they are. That's really it. I worked on the next episode of The Last Drive-In that's coming out in about a week and a half, but I can show that.
Well, there you go.
I'll show that next.
We'll
be good on that.
Cool. So check that stuff out. Also, Joe has some films out there that you should check out. Just IMDb him. He's got a list of stuff out there. And I got some of his, at least one of his films on my shelf back.
At least one,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, I got at least
two, because you technically have the short that's a special feature.
Oh, that's right. So,
actually, today was the anniversary of us shooting that short, because it showed up on my Facebook.
Oh, really?
Facebook memories, and there's a picture of me with Robert Zadar and Joe Estevez at the end of shooting The Perfect Candidate. And man, that was That was a fun time. That film's on YouTube. Look up The Perfect Candidate with Joe Estevez on YouTube, and you can find the full movie.
Awesome. Fantastic. And Mr. Ian Simmons, License to Shill, the floor is yours.
I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com and also right here on YouTube. We do interviews and roundtable reviews and live streams. And this Wednesday, we'll do a live stream of another movie that starts with an M, equally important to the art of cinema. Yes, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. So join us live at 8 p.m. Central on Wednesday. But other than that, I'm also here on Monday nights, often talking movies with Mark and Joe, and loving every second of it.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us. And yes, folks, if you're all interested, specialmarkproductions.com for all your needs. We've got our links up there. It's been a little light in reviews, and in light, I mean there's only been about 8 reviews dropped this month, but I've got 5 coming up this week that will be dropping, and then a couple written next week and such. So there's some embargoes on a few of them. So, but stay tuned for that and whatever else I come up with. We thank you very much. And until next time, we'll just say good night, everyone.
Good night.